Picard's greatest Star Trek TNG episode sets up why Jean-Luc quit Starfleet. When Star Trek Picard premiered in 2020, fans were shocked to learn that Admiral Jean-Luc Picard had not only retired from Starfleet, but had done so bitterly and in protest. This revelation posed a haunting question. What could make a man like Picard, once the paragon of duty, diplomacy, and Federation ideals, walk away from the organization he gave his life to? While Picard eventually explored the Romulan rescue mission and the betrayal by Starfleet Command, the seeds of this dramatic exit were planted decades earlier. In fact, Star Trek The Next Generation had already delivered a quiet, philosophical episode that perfectly foreshadowed Jean-Luc's eventual decision to abandon Starfleet. That episode is none other than The Measure of a Man, Season 2, Episode 9, a courtroom drama that centers on the rights of the android Lieutenant Commander Data. While the narrative focuses on whether Data has autonomy or is simply Starfleet property, the episode also provides profound insight into Picard's worldview and the deep ideological rift growing between him and the institution he serves. The Trial of Data, a mirror for Picard's ethics. In The Measure of a Man, Data is ordered to undergo a dangerous and irreversible procedure by Commander Bruce Maddox, who intends to disassemble him for research. When Data refuses, Maddox petitions to have him declared Starfleet property, stripping him of the right to choose. This leads to a tribunal where Picard serves as Data's defense advocate, forced to argue that his friend and officer is not a machine, but a person with agency. The genius of this episode lies not just in its moral complexity, but in what it reveals about Jean-Luc Picard's character. From the very beginning, Picard is wary of institutional overreach. He doesn't trust that Maddox has Data's best interests at heart, and he doesn't trust that Starfleet's legal framework adequately protects individual rights when it comes to artificial intelligence. In one of his most stirring monologues, Picard warns, "Greater than your honor, Starfleet was founded to seek out new life." Well, there it sits, waiting. This isn't just a defense of Data. It's a declaration of Picard's belief that the core mission of Starfleet, exploration, understanding, compassion, is often at odds with its bureaucracy. It's the moment we realize that Picard is not blindly loyal to the chain of command. He is loyal to values, freedom, dignity, truth. When Starfleet veers away from those, Picard is prepared to fight it. Or, as we eventually learn, walk away from it. A man of principles, not orders. Throughout The Next Generation, Picard is frequently portrayed as the ultimate Starfleet officer, but with each passing season, a pattern emerges. Picard repeatedly finds himself in moral conflict with the Federation's political or military leadership. In The Drumhead, he opposes Admiral Sadie's witch hunt. In Chain of Command, he endures brutal torture rather than betray his ethical code. And in Insurrection, a film often criticized for its tone, Picard once again stands against Starfleet's own sanctioned policies to protect a vulnerable population. But The Measure of a Man is the earliest and perhaps clearest demonstration of the internal compass that would eventually lead Picard to reject Starfleet. The tribunal forces him to weigh legality against morality. That tension between what Starfleet permits and what Jean-Luc Picard believes is right never goes away. The bureaucratic rot beneath the uniform. Fast forward to Star Trek, Picard, and we see this philosophical divide come to its painful conclusion. The rescue mission following the Romulan supernova, the largest humanitarian effort in Federation history, was a moral imperative to Picard. He argued passionately for Starfleet to continue helping its former enemy because lives were at stake. But politics got in the way. Fear of the synthetic uprising on Mars, isolationist sentiment, and political cowardice led Starfleet to turn its back on the Romulans. When Starfleet canceled the evacuation, Picard resigned in protest. It wasn't just that the Federation had made a bad decision. It was that they had made a decision fundamentally opposed to everything he believed Starfleet stood for. In hindsight, this is a logical endpoint for a man whose convictions have always placed him at odds with the system. The Measure of a Man dramatizes the exact kind of institutional betrayal that would one day cause him to leave, a cold legalism that disregards sentient life in the name of control or convenience. The Weight of Command, Another subtle but crucial thread in The Measure of a Man is how personally Picard takes the trial. Though he frames his defense of Data as a matter of principle, it's clear this is also about self-definition. If Data can be declared property, then what has Starfleet become? What has Picard become by serving such an institution? This internal conflict grows over time. In TNG, he defends the rights of individuals. In First Contact, he confronts his own obsession with revenge. In Insurrection, he disobeys orders to protect a small group of villagers. Each time, Starfleet becomes less of a moral anchor and more of a political machine, and each time, Picard steps further away from blind allegiance. By the time Picard opens, that distance is a chasm. The proud admiral who once declared the first duty of every Starfleet officer is to the truth has become a vineyard recluse, quietly angry and disappointed. The case of Data revisited. Even the way Picard begins, with the memory of Data, reinforces the legacy of The Measure of a Man. Data's sacrifice in Nemesis and his posthumous presence in Picard serve as constant reminders of what was lost and what was worth fighting for. When Picard dreams of playing poker with Data or speaks with him in the simulation, there's always a thread of unresolved grief, not just for the man himself, but for the principles they both upheld. In many ways, Picard Season 1 is a thematic sequel to The Measure of a Man. It revisits the rights of synthetic life forms through the android twins Dahj and Soji. It challenges the ethics of fear-based policy. And once again, Picard stands as the lone advocate for life, consciousness, and choice, while the Federation looks the other way. A return to duty on his own terms. Perhaps the most profound message tying these two stories together is that Picard doesn't reject Starfleet because he lost faith in its ideals. He rejects it because he still believes in them. In The Measure of a Man, he risks everything to defend those ideals. In Picard, he walks away from the uniform because the institution no longer embodies them. And yet, when the time comes, he builds his own crew, launches his own mission, and takes up the mantle once again, not as an admiral, but as a man of conscience. That choice, born out of sorrow and reflection, is deeply consistent with the Jean-Luc Picard we met decades earlier in a courtroom fighting for the soul of Starfleet. Legacy of the episode. The Measure of a Man has long been celebrated as one of TNG's greatest episodes, and for good reason. It's intellectually rigorous, emotionally resonant, and brilliantly acted. But its legacy is even more profound when viewed as a character-defining moment for Picard. It's not just the moment he defended Data. It's the moment he drew a line between principle and protocol. A moment where he decided that the mission of Starfleet is not to obey, but to protect, to seek out life. Yes, but more importantly, to honor it. And that is the moment that reverberates through Picard. It explains why he left. It push comes to shove.